everybody. Welcome to Frenemies of the People. We are sponsored by Fashionable Eyewear. Pick your vendor. They all should be sponsoring us apparently because there's a lot of people that are visually challenged today on this group. We've got a full house and we got a lot to talk about. By the way, we love the new streaming show, The Donald versus Elon. Keep it coming, guys. Can't wait for the next episode. But we have more dysfunction closer to home to deal with. The Springfield session has come and gone. By the time we get this posted, we'll have several days of Eleni trying to catch up on her sleep. She's not quite there, I gather, but she's getting close. And maybe that's also true for the legislators and the folks in the governor's office. They may have caught up on their sleep, but they're not feeling good about this session. I guess they should now they know how the rest of us feel across the state. But Eleni, what are you hearing?
I think, as usual, after every session, there's take a minute and look back and see what happened and what didn't happen. And I would say one thing that's been observed repeatedly from many people under the dome is just a disconnect amongst the legislative leaders in the chambers. I think we saw that kind of play out in Springfield the last few days of session where, as usual, everything comes down to the last minute. But as I was reading, as most of you probably were reading today in Capitol Facts, why does it have to be that way? And it doesn't have to be that way. And I think when you don't have a good rhythm going, particularly amongst leadership, that ends up resulting in things not getting done. Like we saw an energy bill that fell through, the transit bill that really, caused, actually, in my opinion, some damage on its way out the door of not actually getting even called for a vote in the House. And so I think, some things happened, but a lot of things didn't. And that's an interesting readout from this year's legislative session.
Eleni, Natalie had raised in an earlier conversation that it's human nature to delay and to put things off. But I think this was a new record in Springfield in terms of the things they did not address. They didn't get their energy omnibus bill done, even though people have been talking about that forever. And there's some complicated issues there. But no crisis was more front and center than CTA, where they failed to pass a bailout for the CTA, who were promising draconian cuts along with the other transit agencies. And you mentioned Capitol Facts. Our friend at Capitol Facts, Rich Miller, wrote recently, the House and Senate versions of the mass transit bill had differences on how governmental reform would play out, according to Speaker Welch. Like I told you earlier, Rich said, a buddy said the leaders tried to do a 5-month session in 5 days. That's just no way to run a railroad.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's probably accurate. And I don't know if, Natalie, you've seen things happen and not happen down there. What's your take on how this all shook out this week or last week?
Yeah, I think Don Harmon said it best. You referred to it was the energy omnibus as sort of the Christmas tree that couldn't support its own weight. And that's what we see with these massive bills that as, all sorts of things get added on and, different agendas are trying to be met. It just suffers under its own weight and doesn't get across the finish line. And it's because, they're always waiting to the last minute. Now there's been work, been done from the start of session in January up till now. But there's so many different competing interests. And there's, I think there's a little bit that's being unspoken in terms of we've got a lot of newer legislators who don't have that sort of institutional knowledge You've got sort of newer leaders as well. Obviously, Speaker Welch is relatively new to the role. A lot of, observing of his leadership capabilities. And I think, he's learned some things over the last couple of sessions. Last year, the budget was really difficult to get over the finish line. This year, we got that done. But they were trying to do so much at once, all while you have all this federal uncertainty with the looming budget cuts from the Trump administration. And you look at what, they're trying to do with the big, beautiful bill. And it's a lot of the same things. It's just this massive Christmas tree that they're trying to get all done at once. And so it remains to be seen what will happen there. But that certainly has affected what's happening on the ground here in Springfield they tried to do too much at once and couldn't get anything done as a result. So really disappointing, especially on the transit aspect, because that's going to have real life impacts on people who who can't afford to suffer from those cuts.
So while Speaker Welch may be a relatively new speaker, given that his predecessor was there for 5 decades, Patrick, I did see that the budget that got passed, well, it didn't include money for CTA or anything for energy and some other interests. $40 million went to Proviso High School.
What is the point of being a leader if you can't lead for your community? So, I think every budget has member priorities. Every spending bill has member priorities. I think anyone that takes shock or oh my goodness, how did this happen, is out there. I think I'm reminded of that beautiful high school on the south side of Speaker Madigan's district. It's one of those time-honored traditions, and it's fun to observe in the sausage making, but is not unique to Springfield or anywhere else. And I'll be curious to see the list of all of the pet projects that are in the budget once everyone has the time to read and digest.
As you often say, Patrick, it's best to eat the elephant one bite at a time. And so getting through some of those special district requests is easier done than some of these gigantic issues that the legislature and Congress, for that matter, really struggle with. Speaking of deliberative bodies that are struggling, Cianna, the city council is getting even tenser than it was before. So they are in the early stages of trying to pass their budget, and we'll probably be talking about the city budget making process quite a bit over the next few months as we get into the fall. There was a hearing just recently in city council about the budget, and Alderman Beal asked one of the budget officials from Mayor Johnson's administration, Annette Guzman, about the Ernst & Young study to spend $3 million to help solve Chicago's budget problems. We talked about that recently. And the budget director said in response to Alderman Beal that, among other things, and this is according to the Tribune editorial board, among other things, the analysis would illuminate how Chicago charges its residents less in fees and fines than many other cities. So this was after they refused to acknowledge or entertain any cuts. So as Cianna, you pointed out, it's the greatest freaking city in the world, but it seems like there's an independent city council that is developing, something that maybe isn't a surprise to you as a newcomer to Chicago, but to us Chicagoans, we're quite taken aback by city councils actually trying to do their legislative work.
Yes, and I paused because one of the things I am not used to, when I moved here, I was not used to paying for grocery bags for my groceries at the store. That is still to this day insane for me. And one of the things that I've been keeping up with is this grocery tax and allowing other cities to have the possibility to enforce this. Unfortunately, like I said, this has nothing to do with the 7-cent tax on paper and plastic bags, which I get it, save the environment. But again, that was not something that I was used to. I don't think I'll ever be used to that, simply because when I go grocery shopping, yeah, now I'm carrying, other bags with me along my journey. But then at the same time, sometimes I forget them, and I'm like, dang it, now I have to like purchase these grocery bags, plastic bags, and I'll reuse, recycle. But that's something that I'm interested to see how it's going to pan out for other cities. And I don't think Chicago is going to get rid of that. They're still going to implement it, but like I said, we'll see.
Natalie, if memory serves, I believe that was an innovation of your former alderman.
It was Proco Joe. You're right.
And I think there was an environmental argument for reducing plastic bags. I do hate seeing the plastic bags scattering across
The
the streets
lakefront.
of Chicago, but I think Cianna makes a very good point. Is there a way that we could achieve less plastic without taxing the tax that our shoppers pay? And as the grocery tax is actually a separate issue from the grocery bag tax, for
Mhm.
those of you watching at home, the grocery tax was sort of the reason that's an issue is it's dueling virtue signaling, Patrick, in that the governor basically said the state's going to stop collecting the grocery tax, a portion of which goes to local municipalities. And so local municipalities, and that was last year's budget, local municipalities now are starting to feel the effects of it. And so they're in the trick bag, no relation to the plastic bag, of having to put a grocery tax back on.
Mhm.
And as the mayor told the media recently, we're not creating a grocery tax. We're just creating a process by which we can collect
Collect
it.
it.
Yeah, I think what's really been, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. This is kind of a terrible hand that's been dealt to local governments. One, it's a take it or leave it, and so a lot of times in local government, your tools to raise revenue are very imprecise. One of the few very precise tools is the property tax, but that's very tricky to zero in on the exact dollar amount. So municipalities may say, you know what? We hear you. We'd like to reduce the grocery tax to 0.5% from 1%. Maybe that meets our revenue needs for the year, except they can't. It's take it or leave it, is my understanding, as it is. And so you face that choice, or you could face, okay, well, let's not do the grocery tax, but we do need, it's blowing a huge hole in our budget. What are we going to do? Oh, well, let's raise a different tax that, again, may raise more money than the problem is to solve, and all of these things. So it's certainly something that a lot of communities are going to wrangle with. I don't like paying taxes needlessly. The bag tax, I help myself to some bags at an untaxed rate, thanks to my belief that the tax is stupid. But I think a very strong argument is plausible here, and I'm not saying I agree that it's not a new tax, but it is one of these things that you're paying it today. You've been paying it. It was either collected and remitted by the state, or it's going to be imposed and collected by the municipality. We're arguing about semantics here, but it could have real world implications in the delivery of local services.
The mayor is also going to be dealing with what is at least a distraction and possibly a big problem. The Tribune also reported that the Chicago Teachers Union is threatening to sue the Chicago Board of Education over budget plans proposed by the outgoing schools chief, Pedro Martinez, that it says were unfair labor practices. And obviously, getting the school budget done was quite an arduous effort. The union agreed to a $1.5 billion 4-year contract last spring, but they are now trying to, I guess, retrade, Eleni.
Yeah, I mean, I think this isn't surprising. We continue to see various power plays just across all levels of government right now. And I also do think that given all the CPS and school board drama that recently went down, they're still building their way back up to the top from basically the bottom of the barrel. So I think this isn't surprising. We're probably going to see a little bit more of that happening as just we head into another election cycle next year.
Speaking of yet another election cycle, because we just can't have enough election cycles in Chicago and Illinois, our friends at the Illinois Playbook, Shia Kapos, reported recently about the money raising and the toes in the water from several potential mayoral candidates. And the latest that has been noted by Playbook was Alderman Conway, who had what appears to be a pretty successful fundraiser the other night, and he comes into it with some family money that also bolsters his campaign position. But he's received significant support, it looks like, from business leaders around the city. What do you make of that, Natalie?
As we said, in recent weeks, it's always campaign season, and folks are starting to kind of figure out where they're going to go for the 27 cycle. And so it doesn't hurt to be raising money now and give yourself some options. There are some interesting names listed among others who are considering bids. I'll leave those for another conversation. But, I think he's, raising money from folks who are his constituents, but also looking at, keeping his options open, which never hurts.
Eleni, just looking at some of the list of names that Shia listed, the Secretary of State Alexi Giannoulis, State Comptroller Susanna Mendoza, State Representative Cam Buckner, who was in the middle of all of the budget debates, Cook County Treasurer Maria Pappas, Alderman Andre Vasquez, I hadn't heard that name pop up yet, and another new name, we've heard the rumors, but I haven't seen it published anywhere, lobbyist John Kelly, and then, of course, perennial candidate Willie Wilson. So what do you make of that field? And that's probably not the end of the list of the people that tossed their hat into the ring.
Yeah, I mean, none of those names surprise me. I think we're going to see a handful more added, subtracted, multiplied until we get closer to announcements. But I think I would guess in the coming months we might see some more solid announcements or commitments coming through, because with such a large field, you're going to want to try to enter the race first and clear it if you can. So that'll be interesting. And ultimately, we'll have to see where the money goes. That's what's going to dictate who stays in and out of the race.
So former longtime Richard M. Daley, government official and political ally, and also under Mayor Rahm Emanuel, Forrest Claypool, had an op-ed recently in the Tribune and said that every Chicago family is responsible for $85,000 in public debt, roughly half each from the city and the state. No other city's residents' debt burden comes close. More than 43% of Chicago's budget is consumed by debt service and pension payments, by far the highest in the nation. So the reason I raise that is, why would any of those folks want this job? It's more of a rhetorical question, I guess. So we'll just...
Yeah, I don't think we want to answer that, Eric. Well, we're happy to take those conversations offline with anyone who's listening, but
just reach out to Eleni. She'll set something up. Well, let's get to, since we've already talked about so many terrible things, let's talk about terrible things that are coming up that we can't wait. Can I start I made reference to it earlier. I think that there's rumors, and maybe by the time this is changing on an hourly basis, maybe by the time we get this posted up on the YouTube, Elon and President Trump will make up. And when couples have fights and then they make up, what's going to happen in that makeup session? Will they be skipping through the meadow, picking up forget-me-nots? It's terrible to think about. What do you think, Patrick? What's terrible?
Think, what else is going to be terrible on that vein is all of a sudden, I think Senator Fetterman was saying this yesterday or a couple days ago, which is Elon Musk was the worst thing in the world to half of the country 48 hours ago. Now the roles have all reversed, and by the time this airs, it'll probably reverse again. And I think it's this instantaneous search for validation out of political leadership. Things change, things get messy. Maybe we should all take a step back and realize, in the view of things, will mean things said about one another on a social media platform really matter in 100 years when people look back on this? Probably not. So let's stop getting obsessed with tweets.
I mean, after the AI robots kill us all. Cianna, kudos to you for already raising one terrible thing, the grocery bag tax. But what else are you looking forward to that will be terrible?
Speaking of Twitter, okay, I have to address the fact that McDonald's announced that the snack wrap is coming back July 10th. So after 9 years of going on a hiatus, it's coming back. And I'm really excited. This line is going to be super long. I've honestly never had a snack wrap before with the chicken, and it's like lettuce and this really good sauce. So I'm excited to wait in the line. Sounds terrible because the fact that I'm so excited to wait in this line for the snack wrap
At McDonald's.
at McDonald's.
Does that come with a Happy Meal toy?
No, but hey, it's Free Fry Friday today if you have the app.
Oh my goodness. How about the Queen of Terribleness, Eleni?
Yeah. So sounds terrible. Can't wait. We're gonna go to Naperville today. Sounds terrible. Can't wait. What happens at Topgolf tonight? I'm a little worried, but I did see. Super sounds terrible. Can't wait. Didn't want to break the news to you, Patrick, here, but I'm going to. I
Uh-oh.
saw it was at Naperville is actually rated third on the list for top cities to live in by U.S. News and World Reports instead of first in the world. I don't know if it was the nation or the world, but third to first. I'm worried about you guys over there. So do a wellness check later.
Up your game,
I appreciate
Patrick.
it. And you will note there are no bag taxes in Naperville. Take as many bags as you want. If you are a bad guy or gal doing bad things and you leave a Glock in your car, however, you will be caught, you will be arrested, and you will be detained here in Law and Order, DuPage and Will County.
Especially at Topgolf. Well, all of those things sound terrible, and I think we have so many more terrible things to look forward to. And if it's terrible, it's Frenemies of the People. Producer Grace is our producer. She also draws stuff. Check out Grace Draws Stuff. And for Patrick, Eleni, Cianna, and Natalie, who went off into cyberspace, we thank you for joining us.